Welcome to Career Spotlight Academy, your daily deep dive into the world of STEM careers and entrepreneurship, where we explore inspiring journeys and the skills needed to thrive. Let's dive in and explore today's Spotlight career.
Welcome to the deep dive. So today we're going to try to kind of get to the bottom of this really interesting story of a self-made billionaire. And it's not, the typical path to success. We're talking fax machines, Disney World, and like a whole lot of no's before hitting that $1 billion mark.
Yeah, it's amazing. The story really kind of flips the script on what we think we know about the whole idea of success. And we're going to see how embracing the unexpected and even honestly failure ended up being the key ingredient for something truly extraordinary.
Okay, you've piqued my interest. Where do we even begin?
Well, our subject, she grew up in Clearwater, Florida. And here's a fascinating tidbit. Her dad, he had this really unusual approach to failure. Every night at dinner, he'd ask his kids, "So what'd you fail at today?"
Wait, are you serious? Who does that?
I know, right? But here's the thing. If they couldn't come up with a failure, he was actually disappointed. His whole message was, if you're not failing, then you're not pushing yourself, you're not growing.
Wow. That's like a masterclass in developing a growth mindset right there. So did this kind of unique upbringing have any impact on her career choices?
Totally. You see this kind of fearlessness throughout her whole journey. At first, she was set on becoming a lawyer. Made sense, right?
Yeah.
Someone with her drive. But she took the LSAT 3 times and just couldn't get the score she needed for the top schools.
3 times. Ouch, that's gotta hurt. I can only imagine how discouraging that must have been.
Totally. And for a lot of people, that would be a sign to, just give up on that dream. But remember, this is someone who sees setbacks as opportunities for a course correction. And eventually, she realized maybe law school wasn't her true calling after all.
Okay, so then what?
Well, she decided to explore other paths, even tried her hand at stand-up comedy for a bit.
Wow, that's quite a leap. What did she take away from that experience?
Well, even though her stand-up career was short-lived, can you imagine the kind of resilience and ability to connect with an audience that you develop under that kind of pressure? Those are skills that would prove to be really valuable later on. And then she ended up getting a job selling fax machines door to door in Florida.
Fax machines.
Yeah.
That's not exactly, the typical launching pad for future billionaires. How did that experience shape her?
It might seem totally unrelated, but think about it. When you're selling door to door, you have to learn how to deal with rejection constantly, how to build rapport with complete strangers, and how to be incredibly resourceful. These are all skills that are super crucial for any entrepreneur, especially one who's about to completely disrupt an entire industry.
That's a really good point. Okay, so we have this budding entrepreneur who's not afraid of hard work or rejection or thinking outside the box. But how do you go from fax machines to a $1 billion idea?
That's where it gets really interesting. So picture this. It's a warm evening in Florida, and she's getting ready to go to a party. She wants to wear white pants, right?
Oh, totally. The struggle is real.
For sure. And she tries everything. Pantyhose, cutting the feet off pantyhose, the whole 9 yards. Nothing feels quite right, And in that moment of frustration, boom, the seed of a $1 billion idea is planted.
Okay, now you've got me on the edge of my seat. What was the big idea?
She realized there was this gap in the market, something that would give you the smoothing benefits of, traditional undergarments, but with way more comfort and way less hassle. And this wasn't just some passing thought. She was determined to actually make this vision a reality.
Now, that's what I'm talking about. So what were her first steps? Did she immediately start trying to find investors or manufacturers?
Not exactly. Remember, this is the late 90s. She didn't have any connections in the fashion industry, basically no money to speak of, and zero experience with how to even make clothes.
Yeah, that's a lot of hurdles to overcome. What did she do?
She basically took matters into her own hands, She spent every free minute she had doing research on different fabrics, learning about how clothes are actually made, even sketching her own designs. It was like a crash course in entrepreneurship, totally fueled by her own determination.
Wow. Talk about dedication. But even with prototypes and everything, I imagine trying to find a manufacturer who'd be willing to take a chance on this brand new concept had to be incredibly difficult. What kinds of challenges did she face with that?
This is where that that whole idea of perseverance really comes into play. I mean, she faced rejection after rejection, especially from men in the hosiery industry. Like, imagine pitching this revolutionary product in a space that's completely dominated by these established players who they don't see a need for change. It would have been so easy to just give up, but she just kept pushing forward.
It's so interesting how that theme of just not taking no for an answer just keeps popping up in her story.
Yeah.
So how did she finally break through and find someone to actually manufacture her product?
So she ends up finding this mill in North Carolina. They're willing to give it a shot. And you know what's interesting? Initially, they were pretty hesitant. But she actually convinced them by framing her product as like a way for them to sell even more pantyhose.
Wow, that's pretty smart. Talk about turning a no into a yes, right? Just by like actually understanding your audience and speaking their language. But even with, production all lined up, actually getting a product notice, especially in the fashion world, that's a whole other challenge. How does she get her product in front of people?
Instead of trying to go mass market right away, she went straight to the top. A high-end department store, Neiman Marcus.
Okay, bold move.
Right. And keep in mind, she's still basically a nobody in the industry at this point. But somehow she manages to get a meeting with one of their buyers.
I bet those door-to-door sales skills really came in handy there.
Oh, absolutely. But even with all her natural charm and persistence, the buyer at Neiman Marcus still wasn't totally convinced. So you want to know what she did?
What did she do?
In a moment of pure audacity, she took the buyer to the restroom for, wait for it, a live demonstration.
Are you serious? That is a bold move. Did it work?
It totally did. I mean, seeing is believing, right? The buyer was blown away by how effective the product was and placed an order right then and there.
That is an amazing story.
Yeah.
Talk about resourcefulness and believing in your product so much that you're willing to just go that extra mile.
Mm-hmm.
But getting into one store, even a store as, prestigious as Neiman Marcus, that's one thing. How did you go from that to building a brand that everybody knows?
And this is where knowing when to take a risk and maybe a little bit of luck comes in. So she decides to send a sample of her product to Oprah Winfrey.
Oprah, wow, that's aiming high. It's a brilliant move, but also a huge gamble, right?
A huge gamble, but it paid off big time. Oprah loved the product, loved it so much that she featured it on her favorite things segment.
That's incredible. We all know an Oprah endorsement is like the ultimate stamp of approval,
Mm-hmm.
especially for something in a market as competitive as shapewear. So what kind of impact did that have on her business?
It was insane. Overnight, her company was just flooded with orders. I mean, she went from being this relatively unknown brand to a household name, just like that. It really shows you how capitalizing on the right opportunity at the right time can just totally make a business explode.
Wow. It's incredible how one well-timed opportunity can change absolutely everything. But that kind of crazy growth has to come with its own set of headaches, right? How did she handle that sudden increase in demand, especially without, having the infrastructure of a huge company to fall back on?
And this is where all of those earlier experiences, the stand-up, the fax machines, it all comes full circle. She'd learned how to figure things out on the fly, to be resourceful, to not be afraid of a challenge. She had to figure out how to make way more product, how to build a team, how to manage getting it out to everyone who wanted it, all while making sure that her product was still good, that she didn't lose sight of what made it special in the first place.
It sounds like a whirlwind. So many entrepreneurs, they really struggle with maintaining control and staying true to their original idea while they're also trying to manage all that expansion. How did she approach that?
So one of her core principles was this idea of slow strategic growth. She actually avoided taking a lot of investment money early on. She wanted to grow organically.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it's really smart because it let her maintain creative control and make sure that any decisions she made lined up with her, long-term goals.
That's a really important lesson for anyone, really. It's easy to get swept up in the excitement of fast growth, but sometimes, slow and steady wins the race, right? So what other kind of, insights can we take away from her leadership during this time?
There's this great quote from her. She said, "Don't be intimidated by what you don't know. That can be your greatest strength and ensure that you do things differently from everyone else." And that right there, that just kind of sums up her whole approach to building this business.
Yeah, I love that.
Right. She was never afraid to ask questions or to challenge the way things had always been done or to surround herself with people who knew things that she didn't.
That's such a powerful message. Being willing to learn and adapt. I mean, that's really what it boils down to, no matter what you're doing. And in her case, the fact that she didn't come from like a traditional fashion background, that actually worked in her favor. It meant she could bring this fresh perspective, this totally new way of looking at things to a market that was honestly ready for something new. But I am curious, with all this success, did she ever like reveal herself as the person behind it all?
You know, it's funny. She actually chose to stay anonymous for the first couple of years.
Really? Why?
Yeah, she said later that she wanted the product to speak for itself without any preconceived notions or biases.
That's fascinating. It's almost like she was letting the product prove itself before showing everyone who created it. What made her finally decide to step into the spotlight?
It was definitely a strategic decision. She realized that by actually putting a face to the brand, she could connect with her customers in a more meaningful way and really get her message of female empowerment out there.
That makes sense. And speaking of empowerment, we know that's a really important part of her brand. How else has she used her platform to make a difference?
She's a huge advocate for women and girls, and not just through her company's like charity work, but also through her own like personal projects. For example, she has a foundation that supports women who are starting their own businesses and provides opportunities for young girls to get an education.
It's really inspiring to see someone use their success not just to, build a business, but to give back and make the world a better place. Okay, I think we're finally ready for the big reveal. We've talked about her innovative spirit, her resilience, her commitment to empowering women. Who is this amazing entrepreneur?
The woman behind this incredible story, the one who decided to kind of, redefine what comfort and confidence could look like, is Sara Blakely, the visionary founder of Spanx.
Sara Blakely. Of course. It all makes so much sense now, hearing about, everything she did and how she achieved this incredible success.
Her story really just goes to show you that innovation a lot of times comes from seeing a need that nobody else is paying attention to. I mean, who would have thought that like such a simple idea, shapewear that's actually comfortable and works well could disrupt like a whole industry.
Right. It just proves that it's so important to pay attention to those like, everyday problems, those little annoyances, and see them not just as like, inconveniences, but as opportunities. And she turned wanting a smoother silhouette into like a billion-dollar empire.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just about the product, was it? She built a really successful brand and a company culture that people clearly really connected with. What were some of her like, key insights there?
One of the things she really believed in was creating a company culture where people were encouraged to like take risks, to see failure as like a chance to learn and grow. She wanted her employees to like not be afraid to challenge the way things had always been done, to try out new ideas, and to not be afraid to mess up sometimes.
I love that. That's so different from the way a lot of companies work, where it's like failure is the worst thing that could happen. So how did she create that type of environment?
She was all about open communication and encouraged people to work together. And she celebrated, the big wins and the small wins. She understood that like people are way more likely to try new things and be creative if they feel like supported and empowered, even when things don't go exactly as planned.
Totally. It's about like creating an environment where people feel safe to experiment and to learn from their mistakes. And it obviously worked out really well for her. Beyond just like her business smarts, Sara Blakely is also known for, being incredibly generous and committed to like uplifting women. Can you talk a little bit about her philanthropy?
For sure. She really believes in, using her platform and her resources to make a real difference. She's a big supporter of organizations that help women and girls through things like education, helping them start their own businesses and developing leadership skills.
It's one thing to achieve this like crazy level of success, but it's another thing entirely to use that success to help create opportunities for other people. Our story really drives home the point that like we all have the potential to make a positive impact, both in our own lives and in the world around us.
Exactly. And sometimes it's those unexpected detours, those moments where we kind of wander off the beaten path that lead us to our greatest achievements,
Sara Blakely's journey is truly inspiring, and it reminds us that success, it doesn't always, come in this like neat little package. It's about embracing the unknown, learning from our setbacks, and just like having the courage to go after what we want to make our own vision a reality. So next time you find yourself facing some kind of challenge, remember Sara Blakely's story and ask yourself, what would Sarah do? You might be amazed at what you come up with. This has been an incredible deep dive. Truly, truly inspiring.
It really has. And for our listeners, remember, think about what you see in the world. What problem do you see that maybe nobody else is really noticing? And what would it take for you to ignore all those people who say no and actually bring your own vision to life?
It shows you that you should never, ever give up on your vision.
It's a great reminder, too, that success is rarely linear. You've got to embrace the detours, learn from those setbacks, trust that even the experiences that seem totally unrelated, they can still lead to something amazing.
Absolutely.
So next time you find yourself wrestling with some kind of everyday problem, remember Sarah Blakely and the Spanx story? That frustration, it could be the spark that ignites your own incredible journey. This has been The Deep Dive. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for joining us at Career Spotlight Academy, where we explore the future of STEM careers and entrepreneurship. Visit us online at www.careerspotlight.academy for more insights and resources.